We are doing US Highway 460. Instead, we're not doing US 322, but we're now doing US 460. US 460 westbound begins in Norfolk on US 60, Interstate 295 in Petersburg. Same with Interstate 95 and Interstate 85 in Petersburg. And there's Interstate 581, US 220, US 221, and US 11 in Roanoke. So US 460 goes to Lynchburg with US 221, US 29. I don't know if US 501 goes there. Probably. Probably or probably not. I don't know. Christiansburg is for Interstate 81, Interstate 77 in Princeton, US 19 as we leave from Bluefield, US 52 in Bluefield, West Virginia, US 23 and US 119 in Pikeville, and then US 460 for Mount Sterling with Interstate 64, I-75 in Georgetown, Kentucky, US 60 and US 421 in Frankfort. That's where it's going to end. So let's do US 460. US 460 begins on US 60. So we don't have any sign for US 460. There is no interchange for Interstate 64. 64 is for Richmond and Virginia Beach. Hang on for a second. Here's the Interstate 564. So we're getting three-digit numbers for Interstate 64. Here's US 58, so we already covered that. So we are going to stay straight. Here's Interstate 264. There is no interchange for Interstate 464, so we're joining US 13. US 460 and US 13 are now congruent. Here's US 17. I don't know where US 13 will go. We'll check it out next time. US 13 video will come out August, like US 15, and US 22 and US 42. So these are going to be awesome. And we get an interchange for Interstate 64 for Suffolk and Virginia Beach. We skipped US 58 congruency, so we already covered US 58. So we already done the US 58 video like last week. Here's US 258 that will come up very soon. Here's Rocky Mountain. Are you serious? This should have been Fayetteville. Hang on, let me... Sign Fayetteville! How many times? Nobody wants to go to Rocky Mountain. This has like 200 people. Sign Fayetteville! And then we get Washington, D.C. Okay. Okay, we get Interstate 95. It says 2 Interstate 85 for Petersburg. And then we're signed for Richmond. That isn't a great choice. But this should have been signed Fayetteville. Hang on for a minute. Sign Fayetteville! Dude, they're going to put stupid towns. We're already in Petersburg. But they don't want to sign Fayetteville. And we're splitting off on Interstate 95. And we're getting South Hill. Why are we getting South Hill? This should have been Durham for Interstate 85. Sign Durham! So we're on US 460. Still, because we're splitting off right now. It says Interstate 85. Here's US 1 for nothing. They need to sign a town for US 1. And we're signed for Blackstone. This should have been Lynchburg. Sign Lynchburg! Okay, we get Lynchburg on there. Okay, they got it. We are joining US 360, so we already covered that video since April I think April. We are joining US 15, because US 15 will be congruent with us. And we're losing US 15, so US 460 will still head into Lynchburg. And US 29 is joining us. Yeah, US 29 joins Amherst for US 60. And it says for Charlottesville. Way to go. Whoa, we get Danville for US 29. Way to go. Whoa, we get Roanoke. Yes. So we're now going to be congruent with US 29. So we already covered that video for northbound. We've never done southbound. Here's US 501. It's signed for South Boston. So we're signed for Danville and Roanoke. So US 501 is congruent with us. Well, we're losing US 501. So US 29 and 460 is still together. And we're losing US 29. It's signed for Danville. And we're signed for Roanoke still. Way to go. Oh, we get National D-Day. We're joining US 221 for Bedford, but this should have been Roanoke. And, come on, we're in the middle of nowhere in Virginia. VDOT is playing the game. Yeah, it looks like VDOT is doing the strike, because we need to get Roanoke. US 220 alternate, so it says 2 Interstate 81 and US 11. So US 11 is for part 2 when we go into Virginia. And now we're saying bye-bye to US 221, so US 11 joins us. We get US 220 and Interstate 581. We're meeting Interstate 81 for Salem and Roanoke. They need to remove Salem. And we get Bristol. So we're signed for Christiansburg and Blacksburg with US 11. Oh no, we're losing US 11 when we're signed for Blacksburg for US 460. Looks like US 219 is joining us. And welcome to West Virginia. And there's Interstate 77 for Beckley. Well, this should have been signed. Charleston. And we get Wytheville, Virginia. That's an alright choice. And we're signed for Princeton and Bluefield. And US 19 joins us. We have not done US 19. We're losing US 19. It is signed for Bluefield, Virginia. And we're joining US 52. It is signed for Welch. And we're losing US 52. So US 460 would head back into Virginia. And we just entered back into Virginia. And US 19 is joining us again. So US 19 would be congruent with us once again. And we're splitting off with US 19. And we're signed for Airport in Tazewell County. What? Just signed Pikeville. And welcome to Kentucky. Pike County, Kentucky. The last state of our US highway. And we're joining US 119 and US 23. So we're about to head into Prestonburg. US 119 is leaving us. It's signed for Meta. What? And we're signed for Williamson. So goodbye, US 119. Weirdo. Because we're getting signed for Williamson, but Meta should be removed. In Paintsville, we're getting signed for Slidersville. Or Slayersville. So US 23 will head into Ashland, Kentucky. Well, this US 23 video would come out in September. So we're in Slayersville, we're going to go to. At this point, we're in the middle of nowhere once again. Are you serious? Here we are in Mount Sterling. So US 460 would turn somewhere next. We're meeting US 60. Once again, we have not done US 60, so we're splitting off with US 60. So US 460 will head into Georgetown. Okay, what is this? Why are we getting signed for Ashland? This should have been Charleston, West Virginia. Not Ashland, Kentucky. So Interstate 64 is signed for Lexington for westbound. Okay, that's a great choice. Here's US 27 and US 68, so I already covered US 68, but I did not do US 27. Here's Interstate 65 for Lexington and Cincinnati, so we're about to join US 62. So we just joined US 62, and we're still seeing US 25. US 62 is splitting off, it says to Interstate 64. And US 460 is turning straight, so we're about to head into Frankfort, the capital state. Whoops, I forgot. I did it in the wrong way. I'm not going to stop recording. I just got on US 460 bypass. Well, that counts. So we see US 62, but we just did US 460 bypass. What did I just do? Here's US 25. So we're not going on US 460. But we did get on US 460 bypass. That counts as US 460. Bypass on... I'm alright. That's alright, because US 460 is just the bypass. Because US 460 only has business US 460 and bypass. And US 460 ends. Alright, so US 60 is signed for Versailles and Lexington. US 421 goes there with US 60. US 60 is signed for downtown Frankfort, and US 421 is signed for nothing, but this should have been Indianapolis. So, US 460 ends. So that is it for US 460. So tomorrow I'll be on planning, so I'll do US 11 part 2. So, goodbye.